future belongs to the curious. This is an act of discovery. Come and experience it with us in Arada and discover your creative potential. This is your path. This is your journey. You decide how it's going to be. Time to free your curiosity that's always in you. Come and experience it with us in Arada and discover your creative potential.
Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to the webinar on In Between, the representation of women in Iranian cinema. I would like first to welcome our dear guest, Medisa Mehrabpour, who is joining us from Iran, and thank her for accepting our invitation. And today we are going to have, first of all, a presentation about Iranian women and the representation of Iranian women and Iranian cinema. And after that, we'll have a film screening, a film called In Between, directed by Medisa Mehrabpour. And right after this screening, we are going to join a discussion about filmmaking and the challenges filmmakers face while depicting women on a screen. So Ali Azhari is also with us. And I would like also to welcome all FIDE students, film design and directing department students who are joining us now. And okay, let me just briefly give an introduction about our two guests. Medisa Mehrabpour is an Iranian filmmaker, a film critic, a women rights activist and journalist who is today with us. Hello again, Medisa, welcome. Can you hear us, Medisa?
Hey everyone, I'm really happy to be with you today. I must say hello from crowded and angry Tehran today to you. And I have your voice with delay, so I'm sorry if I would be answering with delay today, and that's all.
No problem, Medisa. We are happy you are here, and we know how is the internet connection these days, especially in Iran. So Ali Azhari is an Iranian cinematographer and filmmaker who is currently working as a full-time lecturer in Department of Film Design and Directing in Arkin University of Creative Arts and Design. Welcome, Ali. We are happy you are with us.
Thank you so much. It's again a great pleasure to be with you guys. You get to see me every day, right? So this is also a very pleasant opportunity to be here. I'll discuss about this really, let's say, interesting issue that we have. Hopefully, this discussion is going to be beneficial for our students and also the rest of the audience who are watching us. All right.
Yes, sure. Please, from whatever platform you're watching us, you are more than welcome to leave comments and questions whenever you feel comfortable. And we are going to receive it as a pop-up notification, and we are trying to address your comments or questions. So just, I need to charge my laptop. Okay, let me start with the presentation there. And I hope you find it useful. Representation of women in Iranian cinema. This, first I should mention that this is partly extracted from my dissertation, PhD dissertation, and also a journal article which I recently published. And I tried to adjust it for the purpose of this seminar to provide you with the context of our discussion today. So Iranian society have been through a series of political and social upheavals during the last 2 centuries. I can say that these social and political upheavals started with the Babi movement almost 200 years ago, continues to the constitutional revolutions and the replacement of Pahlavi dynasty with Qajar dynasty, and the most recent upheaval and the most profound one was the Islamic Revolution of 1979. What is interesting is that during all these changes in Iranian society, the women's body and sexuality, the image of women and their femininity have been always a site of a struggle. And it was like an outstanding signification of changes in Iranian society. And I'm trying to cover that in this presentation. So there was this chronic surveillance over female sexuality within normative patriarchal values and desire. And the image of women, as I said, has been centralized to the national identity in modern Iran. It has always been. So there was always the negotiation between women, modernity, and cinema in modern Iran. And similar to any other society, it was the case in Iran that all the changes, socio-political changes, find their ways to the screen and to the way filmic representation deals with these social and political changes. So this Islamic Revolution, why is it so important that in my presentation I divide actually this historical review into 2 parts, like before the Islamic Revolution and after Islamic Revolution? Because it brought drastic changes in all aspects of Iranian life, cultural, socio-political, all aspects of it, and it redefined the identity of Iranian filmmakers and cinema goers as well. So my discussion will be before the Islamic Revolution under the dynasty of Qajar and Pahlavi, and after the Islamic Revolution. So these are some symbolic and signification of women's image, during the Qajar dynasty. The first presence of cinema in Iran was 5 years after Lumiere brothers' invention of cinematograph machine in 1900. And then the first documentary film occurred during the Qajar dynasty. And the first public theater was opened in 1904. And in 1930, we had the first Iranian feature film, which was fully shot in Iran. So as Nafisi said, women's routine presence, Nafisi is talking now about the contextual situation of the arrival of cinema to Iran. How was the situation of women? Women's routine presence in public places such as parks, streets, and cinemas would be interpreted as always already sexual and immoral. Let alone their presence on a stage as entertainers performing for strangers. So that's why from the beginning, the presence of women both as spectators to attend movie theater and as a diegetic figure on a screen faced and encounters, hostility. There was this pre-existing religious creeds that not only Iranian society, but also all societies who are sharing these religious creeds, they experience it, societies such as Egypt, such as Turkey. So according to which women were excluded from male-dominated forms of visual art, such as literature or visual art performances. So that's why, it took many years for women to become accepted into the public space and as the member of the category called audience. But despite all these constraints, Iranian women have gradually found their way to cinema as a spectator and performer on the basis of previously launched and continuously progressive social changes. In Qajar era, women attended public space of cinema as a spectator, but they were attending sex-segregated, gender-segregated movie houses, and the presence of women on a stage, it took a long time, and it was a long tradition of employing young boys playing the women's role. They were called zampush, or dressed as women. Also, non-Muslim women appeared as Muslim women on the stage. So the appearance of Muslim women on the stage was a taboo. It took longer years to employ these latter strategies on the screen, and the first adult female actor who appeared on a screen without a full veil was an Armenian girl. Then we have the replacement with the Pahlavi Era, and this is the, as you can see in the photo top on right, there is the photo of Ataturk with Reza Shah, the first king of Pahlavi dynasty, who brought drastic changes to Iranian society, and he introduced modernization and westernization as the policy of Pahlavi dynasty. And they had a very good relationship with Turkey, and still, Iranians are benefiting from that relation, from the fruits of that relationship. So when Pahlavi dynasty took the place of Qajar dynasty, it started, the modernization process in 1925. So westernization and modernization, they bring drastic changes to Iranian societies and the position of women. Some of them, just to mention, is that educational reform, providing public schooling for girls, marital reforms in order to modernize marriage and divorce practicing through legislation. And another reform, which, I am cautiously call it reform, and you see why I'm calling it cautiously reform. It was the ban of any form of hijab. When we are talking about westernization and modernization, there was a severe Western scrutiny and, negative perspective on the issue of hijab in 20th century. And hijab was associated with backwardness, and its urgent abolishment became one of the greatest steps towards the project of modernization in countries such as Turkey and Iran. Of course, its implementation in Turkey and Iran differ from each other, as in Turkey, it has never become completely banned for women, but it was encouraged. But in Iranian society, unfortunately, we had the harsh and tactless means of unveiling, which was the forced unveiling. And while it brings drastic changes and positive reforms to Iranian society and the situation of women in Iran, but it deprives some women who were unwilling to toss their hijab to participate in public spaces. So public spaces such as shops, public bathhouses, maktabs, which was a kind of schools, they were open to women with hijab previously, or sex-segregated movie theaters. But now with this obligatory unveiling practices, women who were unwilling to do that, they had to imprison themselves at home. This is the time when the first Iranian woman appeared on the first Iranian talkie. And this is the first Iranian talkie, The Lower Girl, by Abdul Hossein Sepantan and Shira Irani. It touches a very deeply rooted taboos of depicting women, Muslim women, and the issue of love on a screen. So this film received very well by the audience, and Sepanta, as you can see in the photo, the male actor, became a star. But Siddiqe Sami-Nejad, the actress, and her family, they encountered social harassment and physical abuse, and she suffered from psychological effects of acting in this film. So during the second Pahlavi era, while the country was experiencing a rapid transition into modernity, women who were hitherto merely spectating subjects, they become diegetic subjects. So the image of women appeared on a screen. So the new image of unveiled women in public spaces and on a screen turned into a figure to represent modernity. So as I said, there was always a negotiation between modernity and the Iranian woman. So this is an example of this during the Pahlavi era, which the image of an unveiled woman and a Western-oriented man, which is called Fokoli, they become two signifiers of this modernization and Westernization's process on a screen. So, in 1950s, at the end of 1950s, there was an increasing in the number of foreign movies which was imported to Iran. So Iranian producers, they start, competing with this in market. So they start using the physical attraction of actresses. So to be able to attract audiences to cinema. And let's remember that most of the cinema goers at that time, they were young male Iranians who were attracted to the physical appearance of women. So in this era, we have the new genre, a melodramatic genre known as film Farsi, which emerged in Iranian cinema. It follows the pattern of Indian, Egyptian, and Turkish cinema in this new melodramatic genre. Women were singing and dancing in cafes and cabarets. So in 1960s and 70s, the presence of women on a screen, because of this film Farsi, quantitatively increase a lot, but unfortunately they were depicted as object of desire. So qualitatively there is no such an improvement in the representation of women's image. In refer to the thematically stereotypical representation of women, Shahla Lahiji, who's a film scholar, said, "The pervert woman who was easily deceived became a cabaret dancer and a prostitute until the day when the saving angel arrived in the shape of an attractive, strong man, velvet hat-wearing man, or a roving fist fighter who would then wake the woman from her sinful ways with a slap of the face, take her and pour the water of repentance on her head, and finally save her." So this is a very familiar plot for so many of this film Farsi during that time. So it should be noted that in 1970s, the status of women in Iranian society profoundly changed. We had the 1967 Family Protection Law, which was one of the drastic changes, according to which men's right to divorce and polygamy was curtailed. Under this law, men and women got equal access to divorce and child custody. And however, despite all this relative social empowerment of women in society, life of them, they're suffering the joy of this normal women, housewives, women working in factories, in farms, at the school and offices, physicians, nurses, poets, lawyers, and university teachers, engaging in living normal lives. It has no place on cinema, and it was not depicted on Iranian cinema in film Farsi. So this sole cinematic representation of women as object of desire for the purpose of male gaze, it leads into formation of what Lahiji called unchaste dolls. So women were presented as unchaste, immodest dolls. So in the late 1960s and 70s, we had the flourishing era of Iranian cinema under the Pahlavi dynasty. We had the emergence of Iranian new cinema, which is known as New Wave cinema, with the initial films of 1969, Gav, or The Cow, by Daryush Mehri, and also Qaysar by Masoud Kimiyai. But unfortunately, despite the fact that these films were socially more conscious and they developed more realistic stories, there were no or exceptional development in regard to the representation of women. So women were not presented as unchaste dolls for the purpose of objectification and the pleasure of the male gaze, but still they were in the backdrop. They were unexciting figure, faceless, without any specific characters. So they were in traditional customs, as in the role of obedient housewife, obedient mother or supportive mother, and the virgin in training for the role. So Unfortunately, still we don't have any exemplary representation of women. Then we'll have the arrival of the Islamic Revolution. Under this Islamic Revolution and the consequent Iran-Iraq war, the situation of women in Iranian society transformed drastically. And subsequently, it changes in Iranian cinema as well. So with the Islamic Revolution, new rules and values were introduced, which was in line with the ideology of the new revolutionary government and regime. So there was a significant transformation of gender and sexuality, including but not limited to obligatory hijab in public, and abolition of family protection law, which brought all reforms for women's rights and empowerment to Iranian society. What is very interesting is that during the first Pahlavi era, we had the obligatory unveiling process, which denied the right of women who were unwilling to toss their hijab. And now here with the Islamic Revolution, we had again the process of obligation, so in the form of obligatory veiling, which again denied the right of women who are not willing to wear hijab. So what is denied in this both movement? That's why, I said I cautiously use the word reform for that, because both of them, they denied the right of women to freedom of choice. So one of the most important points of departure of the revolution, which has directly influenced cinema, was the rejection of pro-Western policies of Pahlavi era. So right after revolution, we had the project of Islamization. All aspects, socio-political, cultural aspects of life in Iran started to be Islamized, if you call it. So we had the rejection of Westernization and modernity, which was considered to be the main policy of Pahlavi era. And when we had the rejection of Pahlavi era and all these policies, the rejection of modernity and Westernization was in the heart of it, started with the process of Islamization. So we had the changes and transformation in the field of religion, education, family, law, politics, communication, and culture, including cinema. What is interesting is that in word, when it comes to discourse, Islamic, the revolutionary Islamic regime, they said that they are against modernity and Westernization. But when you look at the actual deeds and functions of them in the society, you see that they didn't deny it completely, but they tried to redefine it their own way. So in Iranian society, we had a new form of modernity and followed by modernization, but there was an ambivalent strategy. So the Iranian regime was against it, they talked against it, they showed hostility, and they showed themselves that they are enemy to this modernization, but at the same time, they were trying to modify it and twist it and manipulate it in order to implement it for their own purposes. So the same ambivalent strategy exists in regard to cinema. At the beginning, in the first speech of the leaders of revolution, we had the complete rejection of cinema, and cinema was considered to be a source of corruption. But right after that, they recognized the power cinema has, and they wanted not to lose this opportunity. So they start the process of Islamization within the cinematic representation in order to benefit from it, let's say. So as Hamid Nafisi argued thoughtfully, in modern Iran, any time that national identity is at stake, let's say with the arrival of Pahlavi era, thank you, and we receive an encouraging comment. So, and with the Islamic Revolution, then in modern Iran, any time that national identity is at stake, women, their social roles and their representation on the screen become central to the national debate. So while in Pahlavi Era, Iranian cinema was encouraged to turn into the ideological tool to promote modernity and westernization, the post-revolutionary Iranian cinema, through the project of Islamization, was inscribed to function as a religious ideological tool to promote Islamic value and lifestyle, which were defined in contrast to its Western counterparts. So this is how right after revolution, women and the issue of hijab turned into the sign of resistance to westernization. So in cinema, the process of Islamization started with redefining how women and men can act on a screen, can be present on a screen, and can communicate with each other on a screen. For example, we had obligatory form of hijab for women, and the restrictions on the behavioral codes, not just dressing codes or sartorial practices, but the behavioral codes which segregate men and women. They were not allowed to touch each other. Even in reality, if they were husband and wife, they were not allowed to touch each other. Even if they are mothers and sons, they were not allowed to hug each other. They were not allowed to be alone in one shot. The close-ups of women were restricted, and they said no close-ups of women. Of course, these are like the restrictions at the beginning of in the first years after revolution. And after that, with the practice of filmmakers and with their resistance, they push these boundaries and their open leeway for the representation of women. So Hamid Nafisi recognizes 4 phases of the presence of women in Iranian post-revolutionary cinema. We'll go through these 4 phases. The phase 1 was women's structured absence. So because of all these restrictions, most of filmmakers, they didn't know how to deal with these newly imposed rules. The rules which were not written or very clear, it was ambiguously defined, and nobody actually accepted the responsibility of putting it down and writing it down as in a form of a firm, guideline for filmmakers. So it wasn't ambiguous, and you could go and make a film and easily they would confiscate the permission for its distribution. And many filmmakers experienced this tyranny and unjust, and they lost the opportunity of their film to be screened. So that's why, women in the first years after revolution and during the wartime, it disappeared completely from the screen. So filmmakers decided not to deal with the image of women, with the presence of women, because of these ambiguous Islamization policies. So, but it didn't stay like that. So women's background presence in mid-1980s helped women to reappear on a screen. However, this was a very restrictive, marginal roles within their limited spheres of family, as self-devoted mother or modest wife and sisters. This is very similar to the chaste doll representation of women during the new wave of Iranian cinema. So women become the backdrop or the background of male-dominated stories in Iranian cinema. The third phase, and of course, if you go to the history, political history of Iran, you will see that each of these changes, it's not just from the filmmaker, but it follows socio-political changes within the political atmosphere of Iranian society, like the election of the new president or the new reforms which was introduced by the reformist, party. So this third phase is the women's foreground presence. Since the late 1980s, women appeared more actively in cinema. Women's images on a screen have profoundly changed by the emergence of powerful female characters. So women appeared in more active roles. And also we have the emergence of filmmakers such as Rakhshan Bani Etemad, Tahmine Milani, and Puran Darakhshande, who are regarded as influential women filmmakers who emerged in post-revolutionary Iranian cinema. And the fourth phase, wailing and modesty as political criticism since the mid-1990s, almost with the with gaining power of the reformists in Iranian society, that the representation of women was fostered were both behind and in front of the camera. So we had emergence of Iranian female filmmaker. Women had more freedom to show their hair partly, as you can see in some of these photos, and even if they shave their hair completely, they can appear without a scarf, which is a form of violence against women, again, if you look at it. So many previously, and also men were allowed to touch women if they slapped them. So that was just one exception, that if they slap a woman in the films, they were allowed to touch them just for a second. So many previously banned films have received the screening film permissions, and the topic of women and love, which was hitherto suppressed within the filmic representation, it feed the path to be demonstrated. The presence of female filmmaker who exclusively started dealing with female characters and criticized patriarchal demands against women increased, and the image of womanhood has been advanced. So the image of women, which was a passive cipher, it changed to a more fully formed, molded character with clear convictions. So, as I said, there was this progressive themes and new images, but yeah, when you look at cinema and the representation of women, you will see that there is the critique of patriarchal society, but still, neo-patriarchy is what shapes the representation of women in Iranian society. Some audience and even some scholars, they take for granted the presence of a scarf, and they even write that all audience, they take it for granted. And when they see a man and women, a husband and wife in bed with the full hijab of the woman, they have their own imagination, or they are ready to build up, the rest of the story, the untold part of it. But still, the way women are represented cinematically with the usage of cinematic tools, still, it is what shapes with new patriarchy. Still, the narrative structures, and it is shaped by neo-patriarchy. So if you look at the Iranian cinema, and then most of the films, when you watch Iranian films, and ask yourself, who breaks the equilibrium, the initial, equilibrium of the film? Mainly, the answer is a woman. And what happened to that woman at the end, when we have the closure of the film, you will see that mainly women are being punished. So let's take the example of Asghar Farhadi's film, with the question of women being too big to be addressed or to be resolved. Or Mehjui's Layla, I'm talking about Sarah, which is an adaptation from The Dollhouse by Henrik Ibsen. So this film is considered to be a kind of feminist, women-oriented film, but the one who breaks equilibrium is a woman. But at the end, she doesn't manage to find what her independence and identity, but she will be punished because she lost her family, she lost a child, and she has to live alone, a lonely life. So there is a lot to talk about and a lot to say. So I would like to say that filmmakers are still trying to find a leeway to present women on a screen in a different way. So now, thank you for being with us and following my presentation. I think before going to our exciting interview, which I'm looking forward to, we are going to have the screening of the film In Between, directed by Medisa Mehrabpour, and Ali Azhari was the DP of that film, the director of photography. So are we ready for the screening, Mr. Çağdaş? Yeah, okay.
چیه؟ من موندم آخه که وقت کردی شوهر پیدا کنی اصلا.
البته که شوهر منو پیدا کرد.
نه دیگه، نه پیچون، داری میپیچونی. تعریف باید بکنی از اولش ها.
که از اولش از یه شبی شروع شد که تو جنگل گم شد.
دوتایی گم شدی؟
بعدش چی شد؟ بعدش چی شد؟ خب شد دیگه. بذار قسمت کنی تنهاییمونو میونه سفره شب تو با من. بذار بین من و تو دستای ما پلی باشه واسه از خود گذشتن.
متشکرم از اجازه.
البته که من دنبال شوهر نمیگشتم، البته یه سری هم هستن
میگردن، خیلی هم میگردن ولی پیدا نمیکنن.
خب نکتهش همینه، نباید بگردی. ببینم این گوشی تو داره زنگ می‌خوره. آره برم جواب بدم یه دقیقه.
بذار برات میارمش عزیزم.
نه من تو تلگرام خوندم فقط تا راهنمایی تعطیل دارم.
نسلی جون اون دستمال به من میدی؟
بیا عزیزم. الان دختر شما کلاس چندمه؟
پارمیدا کوچولوه هنوز، کلاس دومه.
عزیزم حال میکنه حسابی امروز.
وای نه، از صبح مراسم گریه و زاری داریم تو خونه که من میخوام برم مدرسه پیش دوستان.
باریکلا.
عین علی ما. سریع دفتر و ماشینشو جمع کرده که منم میام پیش خاله کیمیا و خاله نازلی.
من قربونت برم خاله با این گندی که زدی به موهات.
آره تازه فکر میکنه خیلی هم خوشگل شده.
خوب نیستا به هر حال بین این همه خانوم با این سنش.
راستی ما میرم کوش.
نمیدونم مامان، صبحی داشته باش بازی میکردی کجا گذاشتیش؟
عزیزم ببین شاید پیش کیمزیه، بپرس ازش.
وای نگاه کن تو رو خدا، از بس کثیفت و برجم معلوم نیست.
کثافت قشنگ.
ببینم. تو تیره خیلی بهت میادا. چرا روشن کرده بودی اصلا؟
راست میگه، الان هجار با این قیافه ببینت دیوونه میشه از خوشحالی.
واقعی؟
بله واقعی. ولی زیبا خدا کنین توره کنسل نشه، یکم بزنیم بیرون از این کثافت.
هم حالا مرتی که یه چیزی گفته فضا امنیتی خبری نیست که.
پرمویی؟
جونم نیما. گذاشتمش تو کشوی بغل گاز. همونجا که قبضا
تو کجا میخوایم بریم؟
هورامان کردستان.
اونجا الان مرز بسته است. منم کلی از مهمونان تو راه موندم.
ای بابا حیف شد که من خیلی سفر لازمم.
ببین من یه سری از دوست و رفیقام هستن آخر هفته کمطوری میرن این ور اون ور. میخوای معرفیتون کنم؟ لینکشین؟
رفیق خودت هم میشناسیشون؟
خیلی هم بچهای باحالین.
خب میخوای شماره منو بده بهشون، شماره اونا رو بده؟
چم شاخکاش هنوز کار
هماهنگ کنیم.
باش
پس یادم بره حتما.
زشتی ساخه؟
نه بابا چه زشتی، که این همینجوری بیشتر حال میکنه.
چطوره؟ خوشگل شدم؟
خیلی خوشگل شدی آره.
هانی کش اکستنشن رو ندیدی؟
همون کش بالایی از قربونت برم.
ببینم
جونم
توز گریه کردی قربونت برم. چرا گوش نمیدی به حرف؟
دست خودم نیست کیمزی. از صبح که وقت سفارتمون اومده یه حالیم. هم برم اونجا تو کشور غریب تک و تنها. مامان اینجا بدون من دق میکنه.
احمق جون مگه قرار تنها بمونی تو خوب باش. مامانینم خوبه. خوب باش. خوب من باش.
خب به عمه بگو بیای پیش من دیگه.
من مستقی خوشگل میخوام از نه که زرد نشه.
خدافظ.
خیلی بد. مرسی عزیزم. نکشی ما رو آقا پلیسه.
برو کنارم 2000 دقیقه
نخوری بلاکاش مامان.
خیسی که هنوز.
آره خوش نشد دیگه.
ببینم لاکتو.
بیا عزیزم بیا نگاه کن.
برای چی فوتشو میکنی؟
برای اینکه خوشه. دوست داری تو هم فوت کنی؟ بیا. تو کلافه نمیشینی ما همش خونه است؟
نه بابا، آخه من همش نیستم. تازه کاری خونه رو انجام میده.
خب چه فرقی میکنه؟ یکی تو نیستین در هر حال.
اینجوری حداقل خیالم راحته که نیما حواسش به علی هست. بابای خودش که به هیچ جاش نبود. مرتی که همش دنبال کثافتکاریای خودش بود.
چیه؟
این تتو خاله دوست داری؟
اون نگاه تتو.
خب شیطون شده پسر.
آره تازه الانم افتاده توی عسل.
رابطه نیما با علیرضا چطوره حالا؟
خوب، جونشون در میره برای هم دیگه.
با شما چطور؟
بابا اینا خیلی کاپل مدرنی هست. سپیده چی فکر کردی؟
آره والا خوب حاملش نکرده تا حالا.
میشناسیش؟
آره بتمنه دیگه.
نکنه تو هم مثل من عاشق بتمنی؟
منم قیصر رو نشون بدم.
آره ببینم.
قیصر میخوام اکسرم بهتون نشون بدم.
بیار ببینم عزیزم بیار.
سایه جون اینو من کجا بذارم چیزیش نشه؟
اینو بده من تو برو کارت بکن.
چی شد پس؟
ببین اینجا یکم برات مرتب میکنم که با هم مچم.
کجا نشه؟
نه اوکی. یه بافت خوشگلم اینجا برات میذارم که حسابی کیوچی.
یعنی الان نیستم.
اصلا.
چه انگشتات خوشگله.
آره؟
خیلی باحاله.
راستی بچه‌هاش رسیدن؟ یکیشون ساعت 6 عصر امروز
به به قوموش زبه.
چرا خودت بابا؟
یه حال جادویی داره.
یه همخونه‌ای داشتم اونجا یا نیست. از کوبا برام آوردتش.
میگم یه حال عجیب غریبی داره. از یه جای عجیب غریب اومد.
آره؟ اوکی. کیپیت.
واقعا؟
آره. به شرطی که یادت باشه اولین کادوی امروزتو کی بهت داد.
فکر کن 1% یادم بره.
چقدرم مامانشو دوست داشت. آره. گریه میکردن.
عاشقشم.
ماشینشو میگه مامی.
نه خیر. برو که دارم آقا دازه بردش.
باید عکس بگیره بفرسته.
میگم درد داره.
بیاید نزبره خودتو بکنه ببین درد داره یا نه.
دخترم بابا.
مگه دختر پسر داره بابا؟
نه بابا ایشون سوپرمنه زورش خیلی زیاده.
اوکی. مامی میشه تیغو بهم بدی؟
من
اینجا
بفرمایید. فقط مراقب باش دستتو نبری.
من بزنم.
تو چی بالا نیستی؟
بچه صدات رو نمی‌کنی.
نه بیا اینجا مثلا بکش. چی شد؟
سایه جان این دختر چند شاخه اکسشن داره؟
بلده.
من نیما رو گرفتم. عاشقشی؟
چه به این حرفو ورو جک؟
خوشگله. علیرضا هم ببر ردشو بهش بده.
دورانیه. خب راستی میدون چی شد؟ ببین مامانت روی میز من پارک تو رو دید. آره. نه من حوصله این دختر مریم مهتاب چیه ندارم. باشه اینجا خیلی شلوغه. بهت زنگ میزنم. خدافظ. ایران خانمشون ببخشید خانم.
بازو بنشین یک دم که به لب آمد جان عزیزم از انتظارت قهر و جدایی بستم که بسته دامت تمام شد شکارت قهر تو میسوزد دل ولی تو نداری.
سلام علیکم. خوب هستین؟ قربونشون برم.
سلام خانم حسینی. حال شما خوب هستین؟
الحمدلله.
قربونشم.
بیا ببین شمالگی تو چه به سر من محبکر من.
خیلی خوش اومده.
پاشو قربونت برم. پاشو کاراتو بکنه نوبت توئه.
الو سلام. خوبی ما بابا. تو خوبی؟ تو راهی؟ آره یه ذره از خودش میدونن که خیلی وقت کارم تمام شد. حالا انقدر عجله نکن.
علی رضا.
باشه میگم.
قربونت عزیزم.
وایسا یه لحظه. وایسا زنگ میزنم.
مبارکت باشه عزیزم.
مرسی قربونت عزیزم. خوشبخشی. دورت بگم سفید بخشی. خوشگلم. مبارک عروس خانم.
اوه تصادف بدجور کردیم که.
برای مالی من
خب من باید برم تعمیرگاه که.
بمون تو خودم درستش میکنم.
هنرکم.
خدافظ جون خودت.
علی رضا رد تو بردی؟
بچه ها این چشم با کار ندیدیم.
میز زیبا رو نگاه کن.
تمام کمودا رو گشتم.
دستمال بره خوشگلم. ببین این سفره رو بریم با دوستای آقا. کجا؟ نمیدونم قرشون بزنیم.
Okay. Hello, welcome back. Medisa, are you with us?
I think she'll be with us in a second.
Okay, while she joins us, for those who has not been with us from the beginning, let me just introduce Medisa Mehrabpour once more. She is an Iranian filmmaker, a film critic, a women rights activist and journalist whose film we have watched right now. And also Ali Azhari is an Iranian cinematographer and filmmaker who is currently teaching at Arkin University of Creative Arts and Design, departments of film design and directing. So Medisa, welcome back. And so thanks for being with us. Let's start with this question that being a female filmmaker, it means facing challenges behind camera and in front of camera. Specifically for this film, I don't want to limit ourselves to these films, but this is an exemplary film because it is mainly shot, all shot in a hairdresser, which is a sex-segregated sphere in Iran. So we don't have mixed gendered, let's say, hairdresser in Iran, and these are close to men. So I think no Iranian man who is living inside Iran has never had the experience of going and seeing a woman having their hair dyed or cut or anything as such. So your camera goes to this sphere and depict the women in the place that they are supposed to be unveiled. So tell us about this film and whatever other experiences, Medisa.
I think we lost our connection.
Yeah, unfortunately, especially these days because of the political unrest in Iran, the internet connection is very poor. So I hope she can join us. Ali, would you like to start talking about the challenges you face?
Well, there wasn't only one challenge. There were many challenges that we were facing. For the first time, I read the script for the first time. My first question was, okay, how? This is really great, but how? How are you going to show all these women in their most private space in Iran? Because I knew that she wanted to send the film to like local film festivals as well. And she wanted to have the screening. So the biggest question mark on my head was that how are you going to shoot this? And she's right now here. Let's hear it from her first, and then I'll share my experiences as well.
Yes, Medisa, did you hear my question?
Sorry, my internet was interrupted for a moment, so I couldn't hear you after the movie was finished. Sorry.
Okay, the question is that
I can hear you.
Okay, the question is that how dare you touching on such an issue, such a story, because it's a sex-segregated sphere only dedicated to women. So what challenges you face?
Sorry, I cannot hear you clear.
Medisa, can you hear me now?
Question here. I'm going to type it down for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I can read your question. First, I have to explain something about why I wanted to make these films, especially because I think the picture of Iranian woman, which we see in Iranian movies, like the governmental movies and the independent movies, which mostly has been made for Western festivals, are somehow fake. The both picture are not really near or close to what situations Iranian women's facing with nowadays in Iran. So I was trying to make films which shows a real picture of women's, and for that I was looking for a location, like for a place that I can show a woman on the society, and as well women in their own structures. Like, barber is the only place which is social, and also women can be themselves on the barbers. They don't have to have the hijab, and they can be themselves. So that was really important for me, to show the real picture of women's. And I think the most challenge was before shooting. First of all, when I wanted to invite actors for the movie, most of them has these questions that what would you want to do with the hijab thing? And they were worried, like, if we intend to your movie, how it comes for our work resume, and is it okay if we can work after it or not? So many of actresses that I looking for at the first place didn't want to be in the movie because they find it risky for themselves, for their resumes. So that was one of the things that made us problems. And one other special problems which we had, and Ali must remember about it, is that we had another location at the first, another barber, but just one day before the shooting, they told us that it's been risky for us, so we cannot let you shoot in the place because we don't know how it comes, with the legal things, if you want to shoot a film in a barber with romance and stuff. So we had to just change the location, change the decoupage and everything only in a day, or otherwise we couldn't make any films. And that was one of the main challenges that we had. And for me, myself, as a director, what was really challenging it was that how can I show a real picture, a reality picture of a barber with hijabs, because it's a place without hijab, of course. And we had to use some tracks to show it. And our first visual idea for that was to making the hairs animated or something like that. But after all, we see that that doesn't come and doesn't sit on the movie. So we had to change it and make some like formal hijab on the actress. And I think that was the big challenge with the actresses and locations and the visual ideas. And it was all get problematic and at the one point.
Was your film have a screening in any national film festival? Or it was rejected by the jury or anything as such?
Yeah. Actually, after I made the movie, I didn't really looking for festivals because I don't really believe in making movies for festivals. But of course, the film take a place in some festivals in Africa and South America, Chile. Yeah, and in Iran also it was shown in a festival in a university, a Honar University, like the main art university of Tehran. And they had a festival, and we showed the movie on that festival. And it was funny that everyone liked the movie, and it was like interesting for them that we could do a film in a barber place. And yeah, that was like all the festival experiences, not that much
with the film.
I see. Ali, would you like to join the talk and tell us about your experiences? I think I can imagine you being the only male crew in that film. Were you?
No, there were quite a few of us on set, but yeah, I mean, the set was was being led by women, which was really interesting. I mean, I was really enjoying working with all these really talented, passionate women on set, and they had all these important key roles in the movie. But speaking about challenges, as I said, from the beginning when I read the script for the first time, the thing that came to my mind, like anybody else would, actually, was how are we going to shoot this film, which is going to take place in the most private, intimate place where women would normally go. And we were scouting the locations, and curiously, as we were going with Medisa and the rest of the crew to scout for the locations, we went to different beauty salons here and there in Tehran, and I mean mainly towards north of Tehran, which is more, let's say, culturally liberated area. Because definitely, I'm sure that Medisa had this thing in her mind as well. Because if we went a little bit downtown, the chances would be more and more limited for us to shoot in any of, let's say, those beauty salons. So most of the salons we were scouting were located in northwest of Tehran, and I was looking at a couple of them, and we had the privilege to go in there while they were still working. And for me as a male, entering these places for the first time, it was really amazing. It was as if I'm just going into a new realm, a new world, which I have no idea how this thing is done, because I only heard from my friends that, okay, this is how it's done. We go to these saloons, these are these tables, and there are talks and intimate talks between the barbers and the women who are there, and it was really interesting. But the more we were scouting, the more I was anxious to think that, okay, how am I going to shoot this? How am I going to light this? Because I had to think about the lighting situation with a specific lighting that serves the story, but also can cover up for some of the, let's say, scenes to cover up. For example, if you see the beginning of the movie, in the very first scene of the film, we have this scene where a lady is just being, you tell me, what is it called exactly?
Waxing, I guess.
Waxing, yeah. So the waxing scene, that was a challenge to me. Okay, we have a waxing scene.
The low-key lighting, yeah.
So, yeah, how am I going to light it? How are we going to shoot it? And we had all these discussions back and forth to come up with some solution. Or we knew that, for example, when the girl's hair is just being washed by the barber, we cannot go in one continuous shot. We have to cut in between to later on say that, okay, this was a wig and that was her head, and to separate.
So wait. So the shot that we see with the hair being washed, you couldn't move from the face to the washing hair, right? So you have to cut it.
That affects your shot list. That affects your decoupage. All these limitations affects your decoupage, your camera movement. You have to think about it, because if it was a continuous shot, then okay, you just cross the line. You're not supposed to show a woman's hair being washed. But if we shot the face and then we cut it to the hair, we could say, okay, this wasn't her hair, or this was just a wig. So even technically, all these challenges, just come forward, and we have to find a solution for each of them.
Okay, so may I go back to Medisa? I have another question. This film is a women-dominated film about some issues they discuss, in this private sphere, and it is interesting when you put it in the context of Iranian society. Can you hear me, Medisa? Okay, so you can follow it with the written part. So tell us where the idea of the boy comes from, because he is there and he works like a catharsis kind of function. He is there and he is witnessing things that an adult man is not allowed to witness. So tell us a bit about Boy and the function he has in your narrative.
Well, the first plot was about a boy who is going to a barber with her mom for a day, and over there he meets a bride and kind of falling in a childish love with her. That was the first idea of the plot. But when I was working on the script, I become to focus on the woman more, and it's changed to the plot that there is a boy which has some romance, childish story with a certificate woman on the barber, but also this little boy would be point of the view of the modern life of Iranian women. And I think as I go further, this become like more challenging for me, and I was like, okay, I have to put this on the first thing of the film. And on the process of writing, I was going to barbers and sitting in different barbers for an hour and listening to the dialogues and watching the people, the relations between the girls over there. What are the main things that they're talking about? What are their like habits and their desires and passions, and I was kind of surprised myself, because I never think like the atmosphere of a barber would be like that, and women's would be like so open to their private life in front of each other in a barbers, and they're telling like stories of their lives, which normally they don't talk about this in the society, and that became so more important for me in the whole script writing process. And well, I try to use from those real stories that I was heard in the barbers, and for creating the characters also I was trying to have some real samples for each character, like all of the habits, all of the acts of the characters in movies comes from a point in reality and from the real persons. And even some of the actors are not actors, they are like friends or normal people, which I wanted to intend the film, because the real character is just like the same with the characters. Like the woman has a tattoo on her feet, for example, or a friend of a bride. And so, yeah, at the point I thought, yeah, let's talk about homosexuality. Let's talk about woman independent life. Let's talk about like we had a phrase for this, like white marriage in Iran, when two lovers live together without marriage, which is now is really common in the society. But when we was shooting the movie, it was not like really normal like this. And I thought like, yeah, we have to show to the people in Iran and in all over the world, because basically this film was a project I wanted to apply for a cinema university in Berlin with. And I was like, okay, let's show the real life of Iranian like picture. They are not these tradition women which Iran and government want to show to the people. in the whole world. And it's not also that picture which in like foreign festivals want to show from Iran, like Iranian women are so limited, they have many obligations and they cannot live their life, because it's not real. Women's in Iran has a social life, which is like formal life, and they also have an underground life. And in their underground life, they're free to do anything. And nowadays, everything is changed. The media helps the society to face the modern challenge for women. It's not, weird anymore if a boy and a girl want to live together without marriage in Iran. It's not really like a forbidden thing anymore. And that was what I really wanted to show, that women are living their life, whatever government want or not.
I see. Thank you, Medisa, for your comments and what you express yourself and your film. Ali, would you like to add anything? Anything to add to what Medisa said?
Yeah. For me, if I want to sum it up and take this little experience and then want to expand it, I would say, these kind of films, these kind of small films, are those that will eventually go and change the ways of a society. We all know that there's a mainstream cinema going on in Iran, in Turkey, in other countries. All the other countries that we are surrounded by. Especially I'm talking kind of to my students at this point. I'm saying that, there are things that you don't see in mainstream cinema. There are things that you always, there are things that have been covered up by the mainstream from the heart of the society. And these small films are the living documents of the times and eras in which we're living. So the importance of films like In Between for me is that if it wasn't for these short films or documentaries or, let's say, completely underground independent films, we would never know about the actual truth of a contemporary society or a society that has changed over the course of time. In Iran, I wish the digital cinema was there in the beginning of Iranian Revolution for young underground filmmakers to make their films and just keep them somewhere safe, so we would precisely know today how times and eras were like back then in the early 80s. We don't have much great document from those times except some really almost destroyed video footage of family events and stuff. We don't have much document, but now films like In Between and among with other films that are being made now by young filmmakers, these are the living documents of our times. And no matter in which country you live, under some restrictions or under complete freedom, there are still things that are not being shown in mainstream cinema. And I think it's a very important thing, especially for young, ambitious filmmakers, to point their fingers on these issues and show them, because these are not only small stories, but these are also documents for the future, for the scholars to come and look at them once again and examine and research these times. These are really important films. I'm so super glad that I was a part of this film, and I'm still looking forward to participating more and more of these kind of projects. And I really want to congratulate Medisa for making this film. This is an important film, and I think all the good things has been said now.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us for this talk. I really enjoy it. Dear Medisa, is there anything, any final just mention? Or we shall wrap it up?
Yeah, it was really important what Ali said about to record the history for the future, and I think that's maybe the most important thing it in between does for the future. To show like in nowadays woman in Iran is in the verge of self-consciousness, and it's a part of sexual revolution which we are facing today in Iran. And I see the whole way of the attending of women in Iranian cinema really progressive. As you said, maybe like 40 years ago, in the first years of revolutions, women has like no character in cinema, and there was like no touch even, but slapping, as you said. But today everything is getting different. Everything is joining. Cinema is joining that sexual revolution in the society. And as we see on the Cannes red carpet today, Iranian actors kissing each other, and in the films they can more easily touch each other. And I wish we could go further and further and can show the real place of women's in the society today, because I think especially in the middle classes, women's had like the main part in managing the family and managing the society, and that's all.
Okay, we have just one question from Mohammed, that with which, this is directed towards Medisa, with which character in the movie did you resonate the most? Can you see the question, Medisa? Medisa, can you see the question? The question which is on the screen is from one of our filmmaking
resonate
students.
Sorry, I can...
ارتباط برقرار می‌کنید با کدوم یکیش بیشتر ارتباط برقرار
بیشتر آره.
Well, I think I like them all, of course, even the tradition woman and like the fake weird woman, which is secretary, but the main character, the bride, I think was more interesting for me. Because its habits is like I got many of her habits from myself, and because of the Kurdish part of her, of course. And I think that the bride was my favorite character.
Okay, thank you. So I think now we enter to the question answer session. Let me see, we have two other questions. Oscar asked, thank you so much for this wonderful film. My name is Oscar. Please, I would like to ask, how did the government of Iran react to this project, and also what challenges did you encounter in the... I think we answered this one. So let's... Okay, Sasha asked, what was the general response to the film? Was it mostly positive? I guess Sasha is asking about the general response from Iranian audience who watched the film. How did they react?
Yes, I think the most response was positive to the film. Because it was a really new and alternative idea to shoot a film in a woman barber place. And at the first place, audience was when the facing the barber was like, oh, look, it's barber, it's woman's and things. And I think in the other hand, the little boy character was also really interesting for the audience. And in the like popular screening of the film in Iranian festival, which I told you, I was seeing that people are really feel the sympathetic way to the characters. They laugh, they getting sad with the moments of the film, and they could like feel the touches of the movie. So I think mostly was positive the reactions. And about the other questions with the government and the censors and stuff, I think the main censor was on the process of writing the script with me. I mean, it was like self-censoring mostly, because I knew, okay, if I want to show this film, and if because I had to take the responsible of the actress which is attending to the movie, so I had to, I had to accept the limitations. That's the borders, and I have to stick on that. Otherwise, it might get problematic. But it's funny, kind of, and for me, it was surprising that many of like my religious friends and some people who are in governmental, like the head of our university or people like these, was also have the sympathetic feelings with the films, and they were like not they was not really against the film, like, no, this is not real, this is not our woman's like, we don't have homosexuals woman is in Iran, it's lying, and blah 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 blah. And because in government we don't have like the same thoughts in the different people and the different departments of governments. And as you mentioned in the first part of our meeting, the reformists mostly are really open to this kind of measures. And today, like being a feminist and working on feminism stuff is like a credit for reformists, and that's why they're focusing, and they even want to consisting on the feminine rights, and that's why the whole world hear about the banning of women going to a stadium in Iran, because it's somehow getting political and can be like a political weapon for the reformists to focus on the feminism. So yeah, it's like that.
Thank you so much. Very interesting point you raise, and thanks for contribution from different aspects to this. We are running almost out of time, so I would like to wrap up our discussion. Thank you, Ali, for being with us. Thank you, Medisa, for accepting to be with us from our lovely Tehran. We all miss it. And we wish you from our departments, personally, and from the whole Arada University, we would like to thank you for accepting the invitation and being with us. It was a very insightful discussion.
Thank you.
Anything you would like to say?
thank you as well. And
thank you, Medisa.
thank
Good
you
luck with
for
your life
being
and
here
career.
and watch the film. And yeah. Yeah.
Ali?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Medisa. You know, as I said, it was a great experience for me as well. And I hope I'm looking forward to see more and more films from you. And I believe you are one of the treasures that we have. And I'm looking forward to see more and more. Thank you for.
We all are looking forward to it. Thanks to our audience for being with us, for your comments and for your encouragement. I hope we can have, as a department, we can have more webinars like this. And if you have suggestions, we would be open to receive your proposal for the webinars. Take care and have a good day. Good luck with your education.
The future belongs to the curious. This is an act of discovery. Come and experience it with us in Arada and discover your creative potential. This is your path. This is your journey. You decide how it's going to be. Time to free your curiosity that's always in you. Come and experience it with us in Arada and discover your creative potential.